back, and we're moving into our first conversation for this morning. Of course, we are all a little bit addicted to our devices. And one of the things we very rarely think about is our privacy and what our laws stipulate about that. So we've invited attorney Marissa Longsworth to be able to share a bit with us about that. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Always great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here to educate all of us, and I think on something I think we don't think about very often.
It's true.
Yeah.
Very true.
So I want to start off very clearly understanding the Belizean context. What our laws allow for, don't allow for when it comes to our privacy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that as I've explained in past conversations here on other topics, it's very important to establish that even as technology advances and so on, the laws that are in place still have some applicability even in the technological world.
Okay.
So a lot of people will say, for example, that Belize is not necessarily up to date in its laws, and so we have gaps in our legislation. Yes, I would say we do in some ways, but we have some of those fundamental principles in our Constitution, in our Interception of Communications Act, and in other ways that allow for there to be some control as to how private information can be accessed for various circumstances and in various contexts. So for example, you have a constitutional right to privacy.
Okay.
You also have a constitutional right not to be searched arbitrarily or not to be subject to arbitrary search. So for example, if there is what would I say, an allegation against you that you're using or passing certain information via electronic communications, then what needs to happen is that whoever wants to intercept has to prove that there is a reason to defeat your constitutional right in order to access this information. It's not a free-for-all, or else none of us would have privacy. And I think that it's been established all over the world that you must maintain your constitutional right to privacy. And that's why you have various ways. It's not an absolute right. It can be defeated if you have a court order saying that there is the right for us to go into your electronic communications to get certain evidence or data.
Now, it has to be approved by a judge. It's not just because the police, for example, has suspicion or one person made an allegation.
That's correct. And that's where the difference comes in when you get to the court part of things. If you take this evidence to court, yes, sometimes people will acquire evidence without getting the proper permission from the courts. But when you take it to the court, that's when it becomes challenged to say, well, is the mode that they used to get this this information, is that legal? Was that legally done? And that's where the question comes in as to whether the right procedure was taken to excuse the constitutional right to privacy, to excuse the constitutional right to not be subjected to arbitrary search. And of course, that means that you have to prove some merits to a court to say, we have enough evidence here to think that this person is engaging in criminal activity. In order to prove this further, we need this access.
You will forgive me, Marissa, because I've always been of the opinion, and perhaps this is the little note that I read every time I open my WhatsApp. It says it's end-to-end
encryption.
So how does one then still be able to access this kind of information that is considered a private communication between you and I if there is a guarantee? Or, so it seems.
I was going to tell you, be careful.
So it seems that it is protected.
Right. I recall in about 2013, I wrote a few articles in the Jamaica Observer about digital contracts and what you're entering into when you click that little thing that says, I agree. How many of you read the terms and conditions?
It's
the
too voluminous. It's too, the fine points are too...
But the lack of reading does not mean that it doesn't apply.
It doesn't exempt you.
And that's the thing. As part of my preparation as well, I took on the task of reading those privacy policies, and believe you me, it is quite a very heavy bit of reading. And the thing is that, for example, in the European Union, they consistently pass directives about data privacy, about use of the internet. So when you read WhatsApp terms, for example, and Facebook terms, they actually carve out specific provisions for if you're in Europe. because the privacy laws are different there than everywhere else. If you're in the US or Canada, privacy laws are different than anywhere else. So the thing is, you also have to read it in the context of where you are as well. You know, for example, I don't know if many people know, but WhatsApp has a minimum age of use and minimum age of consent. So for example, it says in the country that you are, whatever your minimum age of consent for contracts are, you must be that age to use WhatsApp. If you're not that age, your parent or guardian must approve and agree to the terms of service on behalf of that minor.
I presume we openly flout that.
Yeah.
Precisely. So this is the thing. When we speak about end-to-end encryption, what we're talking about is there are two levels of privacy. You have device level, and then you have network level privacy.
Yeah.
So your device level privacy will include certain measures that will protect from the removal or the transfer of the data from your device to anywhere else.
Yeah.
However, whatever you do on your device has to pass through networks as well to communicate.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that there are several promises in the terms and conditions about how they're going to treat your data.
That's where the encryption is supposed to happen.
Exactly. How when it goes to their servers in Switzerland and then it comes back to the United States, how is privacy treated at every step of the way?
Yeah.
However, there are also disclaimers in there. And there are also, and I find that when you do read these terms and conditions of use, they are quite vague. Other than the European Union ones, which are so specific because the laws and regulations have told them to be specific. The other terms of use that you will find are as vague and as open as they can be, to offer as much room as possible if they do need your data. So for example, with your messages, they will say to you, once you send your message, we delete it. That's what they promise in their terms and conditions. Then they have another section right under that says, if you send a message and the message doesn't go through right away, we can save that message for up to 30 days. Maybe the message went through on day 2, but it may still be logged possibly for 30 days. You don't know, and you don't know. The issue becomes now at the device level. For example, I don't know if you saw an article that came out about 2 days ago about Android phones that from the manufacturer had a backdoor for information. Before you even turned the phone on and started to use it, there was a backdoor into the phone for like your facial recognition, that once you use the facial recognition on that phone, whatever had been set up inside it removes that information from the phone and sends it to whatever source it is. It was a hack, it was malware, but it made it at the point of the factory, and it was Android phones. And what they said to sort of comfort the rest of us was that it was mostly brands sold in China, and so it doesn't affect those of us with Samsung and
that doesn't help the U.S. position on Huawei.
Exactly, precisely, and those are the things that affect us so on that daily basis. In terms of it's becoming such a big issue in terms of how private is our information, etc.
Now, Marissa, would you agree that perhaps in Belize we are a bit naive about the issues regarding privacy? I mean, I know journalists work in the U.S. You know, they're so protective of their information. You know, you know how people can remote access your computers, and they're careful of what networks you join, covering up whatever face camera you have, because people can hack into your phone and get access. But we here in Belize just kind of seem to just go about it. We believe encryption is enough, maybe, or facial recognition or passcode is enough. What are we opening up ourselves to?
Right. You know, I wonder if, sometimes I always think about it when it comes to technology, and I wonder if people really do view technology in the same way that they view general advancement, to say, that's them, they're ahead of us, those things don't apply to us. But when it comes to technology, we are using the exact same televisions that were hacked into in the United States, where they could listen to you through the television. We get the same phones that are being purchased in the United States that there are allegations against. We are no different, and so I do agree that we're a little ignorant to the facts of and the risks of it. So for example, I always say to people, when I did my master's in internet law, I became a minimalist in terms of my digital profile. I have a very, very small profile. My biggest will probably be LinkedIn for professional purposes.
Yeah.
And I have my Facebook, but I'll barely say, oh, this is where I am today, heading here tomorrow, that sort of thing.
There's no need for that to begin with, if you ask me.
And I don't have the Instagram, I don't have the Twitter, because, you know, even in the United States and Europe and so on, you have these events when you hear about mass hackings that 10 million passwords for reputable websites had been leaked. But the thing is, I think that most people feel a bit powerless about it. You know, I mean, the passwords are stolen, and what can they do about it except just report it to their authorities. We, for example, don't have an authority here that we can actually report internet-based crimes and so on too. And so those sorts of, I suppose, gaps in the system may be what prevents Belize from being an active participant in what's happening, but it affects us just as much as anybody else.
If you look at it from a certain perspective, if we're struggling with the issue of dealing with cyberbullying and cybercrimes, and that speaks to us not having a proper structure in place to be able to address those issues.
Right. I mean, it crosses so many different areas once you deal with the internet. It crosses my favorite area, which is intellectual property as well. And, you know, there are methods where we see gaps in law, for example, is where in the United Kingdom, for example, if there is a pirating website, then the police, the Metro Police in London are able to put up a notice on that website. So you put up the website www.whatever innocently, and what greets you is a notice from the Metro Police saying, we have taken down this website because it contains infringing material. And they would use similar methods for child pornography and other crimes. Now, every country needs to do that, because enforcement, how do you quite enforce anything on the internet? It's very difficult. It's a crossover between the laws that exist, and if you have electronic transaction laws, then you can utilize that as well. You know?
And I think it goes beyond the apps that we use as well. I think one of the things that we don't realize is even the phone agreements for your simple profile to use your Apple or to use your Samsung does give give some permission for them to access your data.
Absolutely.
I know I read about being able to turn off whether it's a geolocator so they can't track you everywhere. Sometimes it can pick up parts of your conversation. And some apps can allow you to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing is that your phones now come standard. Our phones now come standard. I tried my best to disable everything on my new phone. The only one I can't disable is the Google Assistant. So every time you say, okay, Google, it pulls itself up.
And so what does that
it
mean?
has to listen to everything. In order to pick up, okay, Google, it has to listen to everything you're saying.
The conflict, though, and I'll admit here, I love when my phone is so intuitive and it understands me, right? But I mean, I'm giving up a lot for that to happen, like, because every time you open an app, it asks you for access. Deny or accept. And then I just hit accept because I want my phone to be as intuitive as possible.
I generally deny as much as I can, because the thing is, sometimes I wonder, like, if I'm downloading an app to edit photos, why do you need access to my contacts? Why do you need access to my text messages or my, you know, those sorts of things? And the issue is this. The issue is that we can't vouch for third-party apps either. I mean, we rely on trusted brands. But third-party apps like all those quizzes that you do on Facebook, don't you remember that the Cambridge Analytica case was based on the fact that political research was being done by doing psychological quizzes like the ones that says, oh, what's your IQ? You know, and you innocently click that. And the thing is that what the data showed from that specific matter, 270,000 people did that quiz. But the data that was collected covered 87 million people. Because when I gave approval to do the quiz, I gave access to my profile. My profile says, well, my mother is this person, my sister is that person. I live in Belize. I went to St. Catherine's Academy. So all the friends that also went to St. Catherine's Academy, the links are there. And that's the thing. I mean, in what way would we be able to assume that the data is not bundled already. Who are we to assume that? The biggest part of big tech business right now is data. Do you know the saying that says, if you're using something and you're not paying for it, you're not the customer, you are the product. Right? And that's the truth of it. We use these things for free. We're bombarded with advertisements as well. However, a big part of the revenue that these tech companies make is by selling the data that they collect from us. Whether it is to profile us and to say, well, she goes on Amazon a lot and she buys a lot of dog toys, so she must be a pet owner. So let's send all her data to pet stores so that she will get more ads about pets. You know, so now, these are the profiling.
To the average viewer, I'm sure they're thinking, oh, well, you know, that's harmless. Because it's true, I do buy dog toys or shoes or whatever it is. And, you know, if they're going to give me targeted ads, it's fine. It's a bit weird, but it's fine. But what are we missing in terms of our own safety? Where are some of the risks that exist when our data is so openly accessible to people?
I think that we don't know it until we feel it. There have been so many examples of people who have felt it, and I think all of us know someone who their data has been compromised in some way or other. Whether it is that you're having what you think to be a private conversation, someone screenshots that and sends that to everybody, and it becomes defamatory of someone else, for example. Whether you sent a photograph to someone privately and then they took that photograph and forwarded it on to other people. I mean, all of these things are dangers that we all face every day by putting stuff out there. You know, and so that's why people have heard it before and they'll hear it again, that you just have to be careful what you put out there. Don't put anything out there that you would never, and I mean ever, want revealed again. And I'm talking about if you're 25 today and you wouldn't want it out at 85, don't do it. Because the thing is that before, let's look at maybe 40 years ago, if I wrote a little love note to somebody, it would likely be on paper.
It's already reduced to...
You know, the chances of it lasting for 50 years and being found and being publicized against me were very, very small. But now, I mean, in a second, there can be so many copies of what I've done. And those, and technology is only going to grow. It's not going to disappear. So the ability to hold more data, to analyze more data, to group more data, all of those things are going to develop.
So let's go back to the legal aspect of it, because what you mentioned in terms of screenshots was one of the things when Isani was talking about encryption for WhatsApp. You know, even if it's encrypted, you just have to screenshot, and I have evidence of a conversation.
Yes, correct.
Is that something that's admissible in court?
Well, that's the thing. The evidence has to be acquired in the correct way. That will always be the test that the court will always that will look at for the first question of, is this evidence admissible? The admissibility of evidence looks at how did you acquire what you have in your hands. So the question becomes, did I do the right procedure to intercept these communications? So the end-to-end encryption is WhatsApp's promise to you. Right? I mean, they're basically saying, under this contract, our promise to you is that we're going to guarantee your privacy as much as possible by doing end-to-end encryption. However, something like that is a contractual thing. When we start to talk about the actual legal offenses enshrined in law, then that is also one of the things that WhatsApp has a disclaimer for as well. So let's say, for example, the government of Belize actually gets let's go back into the old days where you'd have espionage and you have spies, for example, right? Country spies. So let's say, for example, Belize believes that there's a spy in the country and would like to access the communications of that spy. The Belize government would have to get a warrant of some sort
to do a wiretap,
to allow the police to then do their investigations via wiretapping or whatever it may take. With that warrant, they can also go to WhatsApp because WhatsApp has a clause that says we can break our privacy promise if we have a government order or a judicial order saying that we must do so. So that order, once it is recognized by WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever platform it is, they you have given them permission to open up all those encryptions that they've promised you, because your private contractual rights will not supersede the right of criminal investigation and that sort of thing. It will never do so.
Wow. And so, I mean, what you're saying is that while you may have a document of a conversation, it could be anything. It could be email, it could be WhatsApp messages, regular messages. It could be phone recordings, because, some of the phones you can record automatically.
Correct.
And let's say, someone's making a threat on my life, and I want to go to court. I have this phone record or I have this WhatsApp screenshot saying, look, they're saying they're going to kill me. I want to press charges. Is that enough?
Well, it would certainly be something that could get you started in the process. Whether it would be enough, once again, has to do with the admissibility of the evidence, the weight of the evidence, right? The thing is that also in WhatsApp's contractual terms, it says that we will take whatever measures are necessary to protect from bodily harm and that sort of thing.
Okay.
On the contractual basis, that's taken care of. On the basis of me wanting to file, say, a harassment claim and so on, this is the evidence I have, officer. I mean, the truth is that the person didn't come and say it directly to me, but they've directed this comment to me, and I feel threatened by that. So the thing is, will you meet also the threshold of the crime or the offense itself to say that you felt adequately threatened? I mean, there's case law that goes way back as to whether a suggestive threat is an actual threat or not. I mean, you had it from way back in the time when they still used swords, and there's a case where the guy held his sword and another guy was riding away in a horse and carriage, and the question was that threat by even just holding?
But don't we have that with our gun laws in Belize?
Right. So the thing is, what is the aggression, and does it really qualify as the threat, as a threat in itself?
Clear and present danger.
And so, yes, you would be able to use those sorts of things, because if the evidence points to the fact that a crime has been committed, then in that way it would be able to be used, right? So for the actual crime itself,
Now, let me, you're right. I think we don't think about our safety. From your perspective, and I know that you have told us so many times that you read all the privacy policies of the things that you get involved in. What are some of the apps or practices that we have that you really just think to yourself, man, if Belizeans only knew, they should probably be more careful?
I mean, I think that in today's day, apps are so easy because anybody can make an app these days. And so the issue becomes, I almost compare it similar to the food you choose at the supermarket. You choose a brand that you can rely on, because you know that if the brand says they're giving you Vienna sausages, then it's going to be Vienna sausages. It's not anything else, right? So if I choose this specific brand, it's the same way with choosing my apps. So for example, I would want to research a translator app because I'm traveling, right? I will get 200 options. There are things such as ratings. There are things such as reviews. There are things such as the download numbers, because you want to know that it's tried and it's proven and it's reliable. If an app has 22 downloads, you would not choose that app over the one that has 4 million downloads, because you are saying to yourself, 4 million people have tried this and they are okay with it, or the majority of them must be.
They've had no complaints
When you go to Google Play, for instance, those are the very same pieces of information that automatically pop up when you click on any particular app you want to download. It gives you the number, it gives you the reviews.
And this is part of, you see, the thing is that we think of things like privacy as policy and heavy paperwork. Privacy has actually been converted into procedure, into the way that the user interfaces with everything they do. Privacy is built into that. So the intention is that if you are able to select an app that has a good reputation, that makes certain promises in the terms and agree the terms of use and privacy policy, then you can rely on that app more than just a random app that was created by some third party. And that's the thing, when in WhatsApp and Facebook's terms of reference, they also speak to third-party apps. They say that all the information, if you, for example, if you need Google Maps. You can send someone a location in WhatsApp and it comes up in Google Maps, right? That's a third-party connection that's happening there.
Yeah.
And so there's several of those third-party connections that happen with Facebook and happen with WhatsApp. All of those things always come together. So the apps have the permission from you
to communicate with each other,
to share everything with each other. And so you think you're safe with WhatsApp, for example, but you don't know if that third-party app will get hacked one day. You don't know what the protections are in that app.
This is all against the beauty of what we call ease of access, right? I like when I'm on my phone and I switch to my tablet, the same information pops up. If I go on my desktop, it's there as well. And so if I forgot my phone or my tablet at home, no problem. I could resume doing whatever I was from my machine. But it's a matter of all these points of communication as you go along.
And you know, it's nothing new. I mean, let's look at a hammer, right? One of the oldest tools in the book. One of the most useful tools if it hits the nail on the head. But a hammer can also hit you on the finger and hurt really bad. And that's the thing about every tool. Tools are extremely useful, but they have dangers associated with them. And the problem is, unless you're a carpenter, you don't use the hammer much. All of us use our phones almost all day, every day.
It's an addiction.
Exactly. And so the risk is, do you know that they can tell you the average number of strokes, finger strokes that people do per day on cell phones? They can gather that data from you, me, all of us. Now what they will say is, it won't be Isani. We're not going to name those finger strokes Isani. But at the same time, it helps to form your profile. It helps to form all of our profiles. And those are what inform all the developments that happen in technology.
You know, and I think what we do have to state is that there are people who have insidious intentions with our data, because we may not think of it right now, but putting your banking information in your phone and in apps is becoming more common. You know, whether it's an Amazon account or your whatever account where you're purchasing. Identity theft has been something that we know in the US they work very hard. They're very aware of. We don't think of it here as well. So these are actual risks that we have. People take our information, they use our profile to do something else out there, or they access our banking information, which I think that would scare anybody now.
That's right. That's right.
To put charges, whether it's on your credit card or you don't think about it.
I mean, there's so many openings for something to go wrong, because a lot of us, out of convenience, we save the passwords. I barely save my passwords. In fact, when I access bank platforms, I deny. I'm like, no, don't save this. Ask me the questions every time. I don't mind, because I just have this worry about that one time that I might be that unlucky person. You know, because the risk is just open there for all of us. And especially maybe if you're a public figure, sometimes you become a target more than the average person.
How do you separate that feeling of paranoia against perhaps what is genuinely being offered to you as services that are easy, or it allows or facilitates an easier transaction or interface?
Maybe it comes down to a person's risk appetite partially, because you might have you're more open to the risks of that, for example, versus me, who will say, no, I'm not really open. I don't want to risk it at all. But otherwise I think that there would only be a way of sort of justifying it and using it properly if you use other tools, because you can surround yourself with other ways and means to protect as much as possible. So for example, they do give you some things you can opt out of. And so using those opt-out things actually will make a huge difference in what is collected. The problem is that you'll never be able to opt out of everything. And so some things will always remain. As I told you, there's that Google Assistant thing on my phone that no matter how I've tried, I've Googled how to get rid of Google Assistant, and they're like, no, you know, it's there to stay. You can opt out of certain things, but it's there to stay.
It's like trying to get out of Bixby, right?
Correct.
Bixby's always there.
I've been able to disable Bixby though. That one I've been able to do. But you know, I mean, you have to protect yourself. There are also apps that allow for you to run scans, just like how we would on our computer. You have to run virus scans. You have to clean your phone at times to get rid of malware You know, you have to use those sorts of methods regularly too.
Yeah, and it's important. I mean, we're not just talking about phones. It's your tablets, it's your desktop, it's your laptop.
That's right.
These are all things that you have to be very careful
I
of.
think where it becomes scarier and where I worry about how fast technology is advancing is the Internet of Things. And the Internet of Things is the interconnectivity with you and everything you do. So your air conditioning is smart. Your car is a smart car. Your watch is a smart watch. Your microwave is a smart microwave.
Your
fridge is a smart fridge. And so the thing is that the data is collected from each of those, and that forms your profile. That's one thing. But also, technology is still very open to hacking. Very open
you're
to
scaring
hacking.
me though, 'cause
No, but I really do feel that we're too lax about it, because even, you know, I think of companies and where people don't have proper protocols for how internet use is taking place in a company. You know, that's all the company's data that's up for grabs, not just like my personal data if it's me.
That's correct, yes. And the thing is too that when these companies require of us that we enter certain information, we have to be sure and confident that the companies have structures in place to protect the information they receive.
I don't know, Marissa. I enjoy when I walk into my house and my phone communicates with my stereo system by Bluetooth or by Wi-Fi, and then my tablet, it all forms one big network of music and all these other stuff. But if the information is being gathered,
let's just think of how a satellite way up is seeing you. They're not really seeing you and your life. They're seeing another figure, another bit of data. And the thing is that it's all okay when it's aggregated data, because for most of us, the data is being used to aggregate and come up with non-identifiable profiles as much as possible. But then at the same time, as I said, we can all become a target one day for some reason, and then what is out there can become almost free for all, you know?
It's not just what's out there. There are a lot of tech savvy people, you know, they could be in Belize, they could be outside of Belize.
That's right.
And if they want to target, if we're this open, it's
it literally takes nothing
easy.
to
you know, one of the questions that it crosses my mind every so often. This is old, but I just keep wondering what became of the information. Like, before there was Facebook, there was High Five. And so you created a High Five profile with all these pictures. You're presumably younger then, so you took more risks and what have you, right?
Ooh, people so are taking this on here.
And MySpace too.
And MySpace too, and Black Planet and all these other stuff that were like forerunners to what we have now. My question is, so what became of all of that information?
That's a good question. What became of High Five altogether? I mean, the thing is that mostly your data is going to remain somewhere. Remember that your data is archived. So for example, the most recent data of you will show up first in a search, and then it will go from there. For example, sometimes you don't show up in searches, but that doesn't mean that data about you still isn't out there. In fact, if you hear about the dark web and that realm that a lot of us have never seen and that is apparently extremely scary to go into, the fact is that is way bigger than the internet that we see in terms of how much content is stored and that sort of thing. So whether it is just sort of in limbo in cyberspace or whether it has actually found its way into something else, we don't know. We really have no idea. And Facebook could become the next one. You never know. And we've grown so familiar with Facebook and shared so much of our lives with Facebook. And now you're having stories about whether big tech firms will be allowed to survive because they've gotten so big. And that also has to do with privacy.
But we could also watch all the privacy issues of recent with Facebook, and that should worry us as well. I mean, the uses in the US, I think, has really turned the perspective that people have with their social media use and what they're being forced to engage with.
And if you watched the Congress hearings for Facebook and you heard the answers that were given and the sort of nonchalance about, you know, yes, you can ask me, Congressman, you can ask me this, but I'll get my staff to look it up. kind of thing. It shows.
But it was also, to me, I think that's, I mean, I've always talked about that issue. It shows when the policymakers are so out of touch with the technology, they can't even ask the questions to get the information that they were looking for.
Correct. Yeah. And that's the thing about having laws and structures that are not up to date. Yeah. So yes, in court and so on, good lawyers are able to battle things out using laws that are currently in place, but there are gaps that are created when it comes to the aspect of asking a tech company, whether they have taken the right measures to ensure that there is privacy, to ensure that there are no criminal offenses being committed on their platforms and that sort of thing.
So, before we wrap up, you have to give us some advice. How can we be safer online? You know, I think
be like me and just be a hermit. Don't do it.
So there's this 24-hour cycle now. In fact, I think the recent data is showing that social media use is going more towards the stories where things are deleted within 24 hours. You know, what do you say to people? What do you say to parents and adults who want to protect their information? But also how to teach your kids.
Right. Well, I mean, when it comes to the kids, I think I can be very blunt about it. Contractually, children cannot enter into contracts with these apps. They are not allowed to click that I agree button. And if they click it as a minor, then there are other consequences which in the future might not be enforceable because it was a minor. Not have the capacity to enter into a contract. So the thing is that parents need to take back that role and say, look, you are underage. This is a contractual relationship. I, as the parent or guardian, have the right to not only give you the approval, but to monitor everything you do, because it is the parent who is accountable for whatever the minor does. On those platforms, if it ever comes to that. And you know, it's rare that things come to a head with technology right now, but it does, you know. I mean, it's just that we haven't had many cases yet, but in the US and that sort of thing, you do see where high school children are utilizing these technologies, and when something happens, the parents equally have to come in and answer for why these things were allowed to happen without their input or intervention. And so
for adults,
when it comes to adults, in the same way you make every decision, you have to make wise decisions. You learn about the dangers of what you're doing. Yes, it's a tool, but there are many dangers surrounding the use of this tool. So use it only for purposes that you are okay with 50 years down the line resurfacing. Let's just put it that way. There is never a better way to talk to someone privately than in person. I mean, it's the same old,
with no phones around. If you watch Snowden, you know that, right?
In fact, and that's even something to think about too, the fact that they're always listening, you know, and so you always will have to be careful. Not to say that you're committing a crime or anything, but remember, all of this is automated too, and that's why they can grab on keywords. So for example, you might be talking about, oh, you know, we're gonna blow a stink bomb, but all they hear is bomb. Right? And so that affects your profile as well. They start to profile you and say, this person may be high risk, and they pass you through several filters until you may be under further surveillance that you don't even know about, you know?
Okay, so that was a very unsettling thought to end on, but that's fine. You know, if you're not doing anything wrong, you're probably feeling, you should feel safe. But nonetheless, you know, I think what we just need to realize is that we're functioning in a world where we need to think of sometimes a bit with cynicism as to what people are doing with our information and do what we can to protect ourselves. Thank you for that reminder this morning, Marisa.
Welcome. Thanks for having me, as usual.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking to representatives of the Cayo Center for Employment Training. So stay tuned.